Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to our Innovation Career Pathways workshop, the Equity Deep Dive. We are really happy to have you here. And while we are settling in, it would be great if you could update your Zoom name so that it includes the school that you're affiliated with and your pronouns, if you'd like to add them. And we will get started in just a minute. We're expecting a few more folks to drop in, and then we will begin.
Okay, what's an easy way to upgrade, update your information? I always try to struggle to find that. Where is that? Where do we change that?
So if you click on your the three little white dots in the blue square in the upper right hand corner of your window, your video window there, and scroll down, you'll see a rename option. That's usually the way I do it. Probably there are other ways that other folks on the team can suggest. So before we dive into the content for our Equity Deep Dive workshop, we just want to remind you about a few technical details. One is that you are welcome to turn on closed captioning for this workshop using Otter by following the instructions on the screen. And also just a reminder that we are recording this workshop so that we can post the recording for folks for viewing later in the future. We do know that there were a number of people's attendance that was impacted by the scheduling of the MyCap workshop and other reasons. So we're happy to make this workshop available on the MAICP website. We try to post within a week after each event. So for this Equity Deep Dive workshop, I don't know if you all are followers of Elena Aguilar, but on the Center for Collaborative Education team, we're really inspired by her work. And this morning, her email was about equity conversations, and it really resonated with me and the way that we try to think about designing and facilitating our equity work with the Innovation Career Pathways community of practice. So her post was about normalizing equity conversations, about finding multiple entry points for those conversations, the kind of thing we try to do when we offer the individual equity literacy self-assessment that we sent out as pre-work for this workshop, that we center the voices of the people and the experiences of youth in this case, of identities that have been historically marginalized and underserved in public education, because our purpose is to make change. So we're really fortunate today to have a student, Solange, and her teacher, Karen Aris, who is the Innovation Career Pathways Coordinator at Bellingham High School. And they're going to, excuse me, start us out with a little bit of a Q&A. So I encourage you to listen and think about what you're hearing and how that might apply to your work to create equitable pathways. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen and Solange.
Thank you so much. So we have Solange here. And Solange is a senior in our healthcare pathway. And this is our second year for Innovation Pathways. So we really did some work last year in recruiting and course selection, I would say last spring. And so Solange got involved, you know, at the end of last year. So I'm gonna ask her some questions and she's got some answers. So the first one I'm gonna ask is, what drew you to join the healthcare pathway?
Okay, so what drew me was like at the end of junior year, I found that the UHS was creating like the humanity pathway and healthcare pathway. And I was always interested in the medical fields before, and I was like, oh, how could I do that before like I end school? Because I've had so many opportunities at other schools that they were having that they could do other things while they were still in high school. So they opened it up, and I was like, wow, it's such a good opportunity. But I was kind of scared that it would not be available for me since I was junior and I was going to be a senior, but it was still available for me. And it opened up so much opportunities since now I'm in this pathway, since we get to see a lot more things.
Karen, maybe you could move Solange a little closer to the mic.
That's okay. Yes. Okay, you can just talk to me.
Okay.
Yeah, like project the voice. Like it's okay. I'm kind of yelling too. So
Did you guys hear me or no?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay.
okay. So let's see.
This is what happened.
Yeah. What happened in the pathway that has made you have a sense of belonging and togetherness?
I said that I feel like when we all went to, like the other students and me went to get CPR certified, and Miss Aries about the opportunity on our Google Classroom. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I could get CPR certified before ending high school. So I was like, it's a really good opportunity, and it was free. So I was like, everything was free on there. I found that out, and I saw that everybody, when we were there, everybody had a different reason why they were getting CPR certified, either for work or other purposes. But I found out that we all had the one reason in common, that we all wanted to be prepared if a situation came about, that we would all act and we could all save someone. And that's how I felt all together, because everybody was there for one reason, like similar. And I felt like, wow, this community is so big that we all want to make a change in someone's life too.
Yeah, and can you just expand on that a little bit more when we were having that conversation here with you and me, Solange, about I think you had said that you realized that everyone had a different goal.
Yeah, everyone had a different goal to like be there, but we all had like the same. We wanted to help out people in need. So if that, we could do that. Yeah.
Okay, what kind of support has been provided to you to help you in your pathway?
The support that has been provided for me is that the support that has been there that's been provided for me was that I had an opportunity to get an internship. So like this spring, I'm gonna start an internship. I'm gonna be assistant of a CNA. So that's really nice, in a retirement center. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited for that. And then also that we get opportunities to get certified and a lot of stuff. Also, we can get informed for dual enrollment before other people get informed. So we have like a first pick. And then also that we also get tutoring if we start if we struggle in a class, we get tutoring if we're in the pathway, and other people too. But we get tutoring too.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? We just had that conversation about advanced placement biology that you're taking this year.
Yeah, I'm taking that's like a big leap for me, because I wasn't really taking advanced classes. I thought I couldn't do it, but since I have tutoring now, I feel like I can do it. I feel like it wasn't that much. That wasn't that like far away, that goal that I could do. I can still do it. So now I feel like since this area is helping me with getting a tutor, and we already have a tutor, and I feel like I'm really happy and happy about it. So I'm very interested in that. And even though it's hard, I like it.
Would you have taken that class, do you think, if it was not for the healthcare pathway? Would you have taken AP Bio?
I don't think so. I think I would stick to the bio that I took 9th grade. But I like it. I didn't like it. It was like, how do you see expanding?
Okay. How do you see the pathways expanding? at our school?
Yeah, I said I heard we might get paid for our internships. Maybe that can be like expansion. Also, we could have more opportunities on other places that we can get internship because maybe other students come in and then we can have connections with other careers. And also, I said there could be more grants so we can get more certified in things. So
Did you hear that, Jen? She wants more grants. What about the other pathways?
oh, for the other pathways, I feel like we could like expand. We have more pathways. I feel like we only have humanities and fine arts and the healthcare pathway. Because other people also want to be in the pathway, but they just don't align with the pathway that we have here. So I feel like we have more pathways.
Right. So I was talking to Solange before we came online about what this community is and why I'm involved and why she was invited to speak, and that other schools throughout the Commonwealth of Mass have the same pathways as us, and that we're trying to learn and help each other with our students in the pathways. And so she didn't know that other schools had like computer science or an IT pathway or a business pathway. So she was interested in that because she said she has some friends who are
So like business
interested in that.
and then like IT. But we still have classes that are that, which is not path.
Mhm.
So I feel like the classes are beneficial too.
So could,
Anything else?
yeah, could you just tell us about where you see this leading? Where would you like the pathway to take you into the future?
What are your goals? Like, what are you going to do next year? Why do you want to be in the healthcare pathway?
Oh,
What's your career goal?
my career goal is to become a PA. I see that this pathway is helping me like have an insight on that. So it's helping me just get a taste of what I'm getting myself into before I'm getting myself into. And it's helping me like decide like if I like it actually. That's why I feel like it's very beneficial.
One thing that we did that we can talk about is through this pathway, this past fall, we attended, our students in the healthcare pathway attended the virtual conference from Bridgewater State, the healthcare conference. And can you tell, because it was really powerful, and Solange actually gave me her feedback after that conference, because there was a variety of different professions, healthcare professions that were highlighted. So can you talk a little bit about that?
First of all, I liked like the PA one, when the PA came. She said that you can be a PA assistant in you don't have to choose one field. You can go in different fields. You can help different physicians.
Like pediatrics.
Yeah, pediatrics, dermatology, or you can do surgery. That's what I really liked. I was like, oh, I like a little bit of everything. I like to do a little bit of everything. And in the future, I want to see which one I would want to do. Which department I want to stay in.
And can you talk a little bit more? Remember of that one
Dentist.
The dentist. He was very powerful. Talk about the dentist.
The dentist, he showed me like everybody that I saw had like so good grades, that they did everything good, and they had some struggles in there. But the dentist was like, he said that he was born in a different country, and I'm from a different country. So I was like, oh, that we connect. He's born in a different country, and he was never the good student in class. He was never a good student in class. He always was. But then he still had that mind, that goal. He believed that he was going to be a dentist. He was like, I believe I want to be a dentist. And when he went to college, his mother said, like, are you sure you want to be that? Because he wasn't that good in college either. But then he's like, no. He believes he's going to be a dentist, and he became a dentist. And that's what made me see, like, he had a lot of hardships. Like, he had a lot of struggles to become a dentist, but he had in mind that he wanted to be a dentist, and he became that. And so I was like, wow, because you can have a goal in your head, and I feel like that goal, if nobody gets that goal out of your head, you can accomplish that goal. And that's what made me feel really like, wow. He motivated me, and he was like, he motivated me.
Solange, I think that's a great note to end on, and I want to just say to the folks who are listening, I apologize if the audio was a little bit tricky, but I think Solange and Karen could not have done a better job of speaking to some of the most important ways that we try to frame our equity work. So what we're interested in is not just equity of access to pathways, but what kinds of experiences do students have that create a sense of belonging and a sense of hope for the future. So when I hear you talking about that conference and about hearing from professionals in the field who had common experiences with you that you connected to, that really speaks to what kinds of things can we do in our pathways that help students see themselves in these future career pathways. That is super powerful. And then, of course, the things that you're mentioning, like opportunities to intern with a CNA, to get a CPR certification, these very concrete things that are outcomes, takeaways for you. Those just make us all feel very confident that your plan to become a PA is well on its way. And I know everybody here is wishing you the best in that pathway. And we also know that you need to get back to class. And so we're so grateful that you came to talk with us this morning, and know that everybody here is rooting for you. And thank you very much for talking to our workshop today.
Thanks so much. Thank you guys. I hope you guys have a nice meeting. And yeah, thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. So thanks to Karen for bringing Solange to us. There are some more folks who are helping out at today's workshop, lots of familiar faces. I'm Annie Leonard from CCE. I'm joined by my colleagues Corbett and Scarlett, who are CCE coaches, and Allison, who is here providing technical support as usual. You can message her in the chat if you run into any technical difficulties. And Jennifer and Latoya are here from CCE. And is there anybody else, Jennifer or Latoya, that you want to introduce to us?
I believe they're joined by our colleague Marnie Jane. Some of you might know her from the Chapter 74 world at DESE, but she's also a member of the Office for College, Career, and Technical Education team. Marnie and actually Latoya are facilitating an equity deep dive for the Chapter 74 CTE group next week, I believe.
Yes, it is next week's February 6th, and February 8th. So for those who have new program applications for Chapter 74 at the Part B level, we expect to see you there because it is a new requirement, and I'll be happy to see your familiar faces. So,
thank you.
And speaking of familiar faces, we also have some peer ambassadors in the room today who will be helping us with breakout facilitation later on, including Jessica Callanan from Reading High School and Anne-Marie Strode from Bourne High School. And I think Robert Perry is also here. Am I right that Robert made it?
He made it.
That's awesome. So Robert from Atlantis Charter School is here as well. And we've really already articulated the goals for today, which are helping your school improve by increasing your understanding of your strengths and challenges in the equity domain, and allowing you a chance to explore some different processes to learn about equitable design and continuous improvement strategies that can help you understand and address barriers that impact access, inclusion, and success for students from historically marginalized identities. So this is our agenda, and we are only a few minutes behind schedule right now. We're going to move shortly into framing a theory for equity and working on equity in innovation career pathways. We'll then be spending some time with the equity indicators assessment. That was sent out in our advance email, and we will share it with you again today, so that you can do some reflection individually or with team members on the specific aspects of attending to equity in pathway design and pathway implementation. So many of you who are here today are in the planning and design phase. And there are some tips, strategies that we want to provide for attending to equity in the design phase. But it's equally important to have an approach to continuous improvement that attends to questions of equity as well. Then you'll be spending some time in facilitated breakout rooms to talk about the equity challenges or barriers that you've identified. And we'll bring everybody back together for a short debrief and highlight some upcoming events for the community. So as I mentioned, many of you have been working, we know, on your Part B applications and are thinking about the two organizing frameworks that you're asked to keep in mind throughout your design and implementation work. So primarily, that application is organized around the 5 guiding principles. And one of those guiding principles, of course, is equitable access. And innovation career pathways are also grounded in 6 core characteristics of high quality college and career readiness programming. So what we found is that it's helpful to view these in this kind of integrated mapping as a reminder that they're not 11 separate items, but really 2 frameworks that map well to each other, and that equity and equitable access is something that needs to be thought about not as only in a silo, but really embedded into the design and into the implementation of all of the guiding principles. And this is a fundamental assumption that we're using when we design this workshop. Another way of explaining that assumption is to say that when you're thinking about paying attention to equity, it's not just equitable access. If we want to see equitable outcomes in our pathways work, we need to be addressing barriers to equity from start to finish, from design, from recruitment and enrollment, thinking about students' academic and work-based learning experiences, preparing for those, as well as supporting them while they are happening. And then also looking at questions of equity in terms of our short and long-term outcomes. That is the way that we ensure that we're bringing a focus on different forms of inequity, marginalization, and oppression that may be impacting the experiences and outcomes of students in our pathways. So in trying to frame a theory of action for equitable outcomes in pathways, we are drawing on the work of an organization called NAEP. And we'll put a link in the chat to a workbook produced by this organization that focuses on equity in youth apprenticeships. So the model in the workbook is targeted on apprenticeships, which aren't directly the work that we're engaged in pathways, but it's certainly relevant. And so what you see on the screen is an adaptation of the NAEP theory of action for equitable outcomes in youth apprenticeships. And we've adapted it here to focus on equitable outcomes in pathways. So I'll just give you a moment to read and consider this 3-part theory. So what we want to do now is take this theoretical framework about how we as a community of practice and the school-based teams that you're all part of can work towards equitable access, experiences, and outcomes in our pathways, and really get specific about where your work is right now on specific equity-centered indicators that we know tell us about how our work is progressing. So we're going to turn to an assessment tool that we have developed to help you understand your strengths and areas for growth as a school-based team. So this, as I mentioned, is a tool that we shared in the advance email that we sent out. It's a different tool than the individual pre-assessment for individual equity literacy. This is a tool that is intended to look at specific indicators of progress towards equity in your pathway work. And what we want to do is briefly talk about how you might use a process of considering evidence to rate yourself on these indicators and identify potential areas for focus and areas for growth. So I know we have some current and former peer ambassadors in the House who have considered these indicators and perhaps used this tool before. And I wanted to invite those folks to unmute if you're ready to share one of these indicators that you've given some consideration for, and talk to us a little bit about how you think about where your school and your pathways are right now on that indicator.
Annie, I can go first if you want.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Callanan. I am the Director of Innovation Career Pathways at Reading Memorial High School. Also, I am the principal, so which is new this year. So we are in our first year of implementation of 2 pathways, and we're applying for 2 more next year. So I will say that Reading is a, middle of the road suburban community. And so it was sort of challenging to write our application and figure out what groups we wanted to kind of focus on to lift up as part of our innovation career pathways. And so we focused on females and high need students. High need students are about 22% or 24% of our student body. And we then did an open recruitment process for our incoming 9th graders and then sitting 9th graders last year. And then did a special focus groups with our female students. And just to kind of quickly answer Annie's question is, it is still, sorry about the bell, everybody. It is still a challenge for us. My goal was to have 50% of our students in the pathway be females, which is reflective of our student body, and to have students in the pathway, at least 24% of them also be high needs students. We're closer with high needs than we are with females. It is an actual challenge to recruit females into STEM, sadly. And so we're continuing to work on that and getting involved in different initiatives like Girls in STEM, working with UMass Lowell directly to try to inspire all students to enter the field of STEM that are interested, but also with a focus on our female students. So I hope I answered the question, Annie.
Absolutely, that's incredibly helpful. And I think you're modeling at least 2 big questions about equity in terms of recruitment and enrollment. One is who are the students who may have been marginalized in our context? So identifying your high need student population. And then another question would be what students may have been marginalized related to the broad industry sectors, to the career pathways that we're working in, and there your focus is on females. So that's super helpful. Is there somebody else out there with a different indicator? That was really a number 1. So thank you for that. Somebody else ready to unmute?
Annie, I can go if that's okay.
Awesome,
Um,
Anne Marie, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie Strode, I'm the Innovation Pathways Coordinator and Internship Teacher here at Bourne High School. We are a very small high school located at the gateway of Cape Cod, even though I think Wareham takes that credit as being known as the gateway, but I'll use it for today. I think one of the things that we have focused on with our pathways, and we have 3 designations. We started last year with the business and finance and life and environmental science pathways, and then this year we have rolled out our health sciences pathway. With regard to the pathway, it's really about changing the culture here about the advanced level courses. And we really honed in on that because yes, it's AP for all here at Bourne High School, but is it? And there has been a culture that students with disabilities or ELs or, that maybe that those courses are not the right fit for them. And what we have really worked on over the past 3 years, 4 years since we've started this process is really changing that mindset and changing that part of our culture that yes, all students, if we are truly AP for all or advanced for all, then that does mean for all. So what we have done is we've really focused on putting additional supports in place so students feel confident and comfortable in taking on that academic challenge. We've instituted a learning lab after school specifically for innovation pathways to help support all students that include both teacher support and peer support. And it's both for technical and advanced courses. So we're really just trying to extend that equity, and really kind of walk the walk and not just talk the talk, I guess. So that's what we're doing here.
That's terrific, Anne Marie. So really honing in on indicator 4 from our tool. And what I'm hearing is that you've opened up a conversation about what AP for all really means, and that the pathways therefore are probably helping leverage bigger conversations about what is rigor and what does AP for all really mean for your entire student body, with a particular focus on multilingual learners or students with disabilities. If there's another peer ambassador out there who wants to jump in for a quick comment on a different indicator, we can hear from one.
I was actually going to take both of those indicators, but let me take a look at a different one now. But just speaking from the enrollment standpoint, we're a one-to-one pathway school. So every student in our school, no matter whether they're high needs, L, all enter into a career academy / ICP program. So that's our equity portion in regard to that. Is really kind of breaking the barrier and offering those courses or these courses to students of all abilities. And then I would say the enrollment portion, just kind of piggybacking off of Jessica, we've taken a look at predominantly a couple of programs, mainly our medical health care and our STEM manufacturing tracks. And we're seeing similarly, we're not seeing a lot of female students in the STEM track. So that's been a push that we've made over the past 2 years. This current junior class has the most females in their STEM pathway that we've had since we've been designated, with a total of 7, with only 11 in that class overall. So more than half of the students in that STEM pathway are female, which was a very concerted effort that we were trying to make when we came into getting that designation. And then another pathway is our medical healthcare pathway. Similarly, trying to get more males in it. We were finding that a lot of our female students were entering into the healthcare pathway. And then similarly, this year, we've been able to add, for our current 10th grade class, we have approximately 7 students out of our 18, which is up from years previously where we only had about 2 or 3. in our current senior class, we only have 3 male students that are interested in the healthcare. So again, just making those concerted efforts to serve students that are, again, underrepresented, but also looking at the labor markets and seeing how the development of these pathways and where they're kind of lacking in certain onboarding has been apparent for us, and it seems to be a model that is working. So sorry, just kind of piggybacking off of you two.
No, Robert, that was actually great, because I think what I'm hearing is you're really talking about indicators 7 and 8, where we're looking at continuous improvement processes, and what does it actually mean to be equity centered in having a data-driven approach to the work that we're doing in the pathways. So what it's almost like it's second nature when you talk about it, but tracking the participation, engagement, experiences, and outcomes of students in your pathways, whether that's on the basis of gender, of race, multilingual learners, or students with disabilities, or other categories that are relevant in your school's context. That's a really important mindset to build in your Innovation Career Pathways team.
For sure. And also, I just wanted to touch on some of the supports that we have, because as we mentioned, we have high need students across the board in all of our pathways. So some of those supports that we've kind of put in place are we have bi-weekly internal learning team meetings where we have our support people from L staff, from special ed staff, and then we also have a 504 coordinator come in to kind of meet and discuss supports that we can provide predominantly in our pathway programming. And then those conversations obviously trickle down into our core curriculum classes, but it's specifically for our ICP, because a lot of those technical aspects of our content sometimes get, I don't want to say swept under the rug, but can be a little bit more difficult to kind of facilitate or adapt to for certain students. So we have those meetings where we collaborate amongst those teams to provide a more scaffolded curriculum for students that may be high needs.
So there's really shared responsibility for supporting those students.
For sure.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And I see that there's a question in the chat. And what I want to encourage everyone to do, my hope is that while our peer ambassadors have been sharing their examples, you have been looking at the equity indicators assessment and thinking about what evidence you see of areas of strength and areas of need, and that you're beginning to identify a question about your own context that you want to bring up in a breakout room in just a minute. We're a little short on time. I was going to offer you a little bit of individual reflection time on the tool, but I think what I want to do is sort of build off the question that is in the chat, which is there a way to make the STEM pathway more attractive to female students? Are the limitations of the definition of the pathway a barrier for females? So what I would encourage everyone to do is, as you're starting to think about these indicators, really try to dive into things that are part of your context, your school and community, in your sphere of control and influence, and try to think about questions like, what would you need to learn more about? What data might you need to gather? Whose voices might you need to listen to understand something like disproportionality of female identified students in a STEM focused pathway? So rather than thinking maybe about the definition of the pathway itself, think about the conditions and context that you're working in as a starting point. And rather than open up conversation about that question in the large group right now, I think we should get ready to go into our breakout groups, where there will be where there will be opportunities for smaller group conversation. So as you're getting ready to go into the breakout group, be thinking about what your current greatest area of challenge is. Is it more to do with access and enrollment and recruitment into your pathways? Does it have to do with how you're going to create inclusive experiences, a culture of belonging and inclusion in the pathways? Or are you thinking more about continuous improvement where you have an aspect that is presently challenging and you're looking for a process so that you can lead for positive change? And there may be a specific indicator that has come up as you've looked at our assessment tool. And there may also be some helpful resources that you want to look at or ask your breakout room colleagues about. One that I want to highlight because the support for all students to find success in rigorous coursework has come up. There's a tool that's mentioned here in the resource guide, and Allison's popping the link to that resource guide in the chat, which is the Mass Insight AP Equity Building suite of tools. So that is a link to a free online toolkit that is targeted at AP courses, but has resources that are equally valuable for honors courses, PLTW courses, dual enrollment courses that can support participation and success for students in those classes. There are a number of other great resources here which you may want to dig into. The Boston Public Schools document that's referenced here is one that can help with individuals and teams who want to get better at culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. And then there's a planning tool also from BPS that's part of this resource guide that, especially if you are in a role where you're working on or advocating for funding and programmatic development, this is a helpful tool for incorporating the closing of opportunity gaps and advancing equity in your planning and budgeting process. All right, so with all of that said, you are teed up for some great breakout group conversations. And the last thing I would remind you of is that when we engage in collaborative conversations in this network, we ask you to work with these 4 community agreements that are adapted from the work of Glenn Singleton around engagement in the conversation. So also being able to speak directly about your experience, often using I statements, and listening to and respecting the lived experiences of other speakers. We try to listen for understanding, and that means taking the time to really understand where someone is coming from before offering any suggestions or advice. And staying engaged in what may feel like hard questions, knowing that we may not land on quick fixes, but that we continue to grow and learn together by staying in these conversations. All right, so we are going to go out to the breakout rooms until about just before 10:15. We'll come back. So almost a half an hour for those conversations. Allison has put the question prompts in the chat, and they're also up on the screen. Your facilitators will ask you to do a quick round of introductions and then invite someone to start by sharing an equity indicator that is your greatest area of challenge and why you picked that one and what you think the root causes might be. You can talk about what you have already tried or what you would like to try to learn more about and address this challenge, and how you will know what evidence you will see if you're making progress on it. And then you can ask for advice in whatever form would be helpful to you from the group. Hopefully lots of folks will get a chance to pose their challenges in the half hour in breakout rooms. And we look forward to seeing you back in the big group at about 10:15. While we get ready for some debriefing, I had the chance to pop into a couple of the breakout rooms. I was mid-sentence, and I bet there was somebody mid-sentence in your breakout room too, when we got cut off to come back. And it's always challenging to end good conversation, but it is also helpful for us to hear a little bit about what happened in other rooms. And I think I'd start out by asking you to reflect on a question that is inspired by the work of Shane Safer and Jamila Dugan in the book Street Data. You might be familiar with that. They have a great article called Equity, Traps, and Tropes. And I'll put it in the follow-up email, add it to the resource guide for this workshop. One of the traps they talk about is superficial equity. So the danger of thinking about equity as something kind of like a checklist that we do and move on from. So I'm wondering, in your breakout room conversation, what were the moments that you felt were not superficial equity, right? Where was there evidence of asking questions or planning strategies or actions that indicate a commitment to deep equity work? What came up? And you're welcome to put something in the chat, like I see Jennifer just did, or if you would like to unmute, we could start with our facilitator team, invite you to unmute and share something from your group, and then we'll open it up.
In my group, we talked about something that I had not heard before, but I think is really interesting and important, that because students don't have to fill out a form to get free or reduced lunch anymore, because everybody gets free lunch now, that it's really hard to know who the low income students are who would need like assistance with things. And that was really interesting. We had a really interesting conversation in my group about that, and people being really careful about, like, you have to be careful. You can't just ask a student. So like the how and the when and what circumstances you would have that conversation with a student was interesting. And anyone else in my group, feel free to jump in.
That's a super important point, Scarlett. Thank you for lifting that up. And I heard some conversation about identifying, about other ways of identifying what groups in your student population might be facing barriers that could be related to income or education status, first-gen students. So I think it's both a question about how to sensitively and effectively collect that data that isn't collected in the same way as it used to be, but also what other ways of thinking about barriers to education and barriers to educational programming might be operating for our students. And there's a helpful, yeah, go ahead.
Say in our group, sort of to address the culture of belonging, the importance of building a culture of belonging, Robert shared the importance of educating parents about the programming. Robert, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so we just talked about with our high needs demographic, I kind of hate that term too, with our high needs demographic, specifically with our L students, really we're seeing that the participation kind of shies away when it comes to certain connecting activities or work-based learning opportunities. So educating the parents, and that really starts with translated promotions, whether it's flyers, emails home, anything like that, just to really educate the parent first and foremost, and then obviously having that conversation trickle down to the student and identifying what the keys are to these opportunities and how it can be beneficial to them. But even taking it a step further beyond just ICP to make a student feel just more included in the community overall, whether it's clubs, after school activities, things of that nature. Also, similarly, just having promotional flyers and things of that nature being translated in their home language. I'm in Fall River. We have a very high Portuguese population. So that's really where we kind of hone in with like communication with homes, families first and foremost, and then kind of trickling that down into the student demographic going down into like the classrooms.
And also, I know we touched on the importance of getting the student voice involved, even from the get-go. I know Jane shared a resource that she used to solicit student interest, and Robert shared a resource, and we got Google links for these too that we can share out. But feedback on any kind of event, like maybe pre and post, sort of to make sure students are feeling heard and that what they share is having an impact on the programming.
Yeah, again, piggybacking off of that, just having those pre and post like kind of assessments is a good way to begin to identify certain data points. And then pretty much going from there, that's how you can tailor your program to make sure that you're just more inclusive for everybody. And not only inclusive, but that you are touching on tangible lessons or content areas where students can feel not only included, but feel like they're learning something through these connecting activities.
I really appreciate you lifting that point up. And another way that I know schools have done that is by including student members on advisory boards on their teams. So that even when you're processing that survey data, there are youth voices at the table for those conversations. How about from other groups? What else would you like to share?
Okay, someone just called me out, but in a compliment. So I'll just go. So my group was focused, not focused, but we talked about enrollment, pretty much how to identify who your priority students are. I mean, we're trying to make sure that we are equitable, but how do you actually identify the students when you have maybe a racially or ethnically homogeneous school district? Ooh. Also thinking about how to incorporate MyCap, especially when you're dealing with students that are non-traditional or maybe underrepresented in certain industries. How do you use student interest to show them the connections to whatever pathway that you have available? And so we kind of were just dealing with how to get the word out, how to actually get the students, and also dealing with people in your own building, your staff, like knowing about innovation career pathways and how hard it is to get, hard it is to recruit when maybe your guidance or other key staff members that would be helping you recruit students don't know that much about the program. And so those are some of the barriers that we discussed.
Thank you, Latoya. I know I heard in some groups conversation about the importance of really being able to articulate your core equity purposes of doing pathways work. And that's for when you're talking with students and families, but maybe especially with staff. Like it's super, super important for all the educators in the building to understand why pathways are an effective way to make education more meaningful and to produce better educational outcomes for all students, right? So you could be looking at that recent data that Jennifer shared out on the listserv from the OPD? The data about college persistence of students in pathways is effective for some audiences. For others, it's like hearing directly from a student like Solange about her experience. So really staying focused on the big why, the core purpose, can be helpful for that. And thank you for dropping the link into the OPR report, Jennifer. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody sticking with us through today's workshop. I know our time is running short. I want to close with a tweet from Goldie Muhammad, who's somebody who's working in the equity domain I really admire. This is a tweet that is about literacy and texts, but I actually think we can pose this question about our pathway work as well. So what are we doing that helps students to know themselves, their beauty, brilliance, and genius? What is happening in our pathways to help aid in this beautiful process? So as we close out today, thinking about that question and knowing that we will have a couple of opportunities to get back together in the coming months that are highlighted on the screen right now. PLCs are continuing. If you are a part of those, please participate. We also have on the 6th of March an internships and capstones workshop scheduled. And then we look forward to welcoming new designees after pathway designations are announced in late March. We will hold an April 10th workshop to welcome new designees. Those are both virtual workshops, but exciting news is that we will be holding an in-person convening for our network, which is going to be, again, a collaboration with the MyCap team at DESE, and we will get information about the date and location for that out to you as soon as possible so you can plan for that. Our virtual events get posted about a month in advance. Allison has already put the link in the chat for our survey. There are still about 2 minutes left in our 90-minute workshop, and that is enough time to take a crack at the survey. So please click on the SurveyMonkey link that Allison put in the chat and tell us how this workshop went for you. We really depend on hearing your feedback in order to plan and deliver high-quality learning experiences for this network. And you will have an opportunity when you complete the survey. The surveys are anonymous, but if you enter your email after the fact, we enter you in a raffle as an extra little incentive to complete the survey. So I will leave you with the time to finish the survey. Our team will stay on here for a couple of minutes for any last minute questions if you want to put something into the chat. Otherwise, we want to thank you for spending your morning with us, and we look forward to seeing you at another Innovation Career Pathways event soon.